Now, as the name of this video implies, this is the fourth part of a story, so if you don't want to be lost and confused, I'd recommend starting at part 1, and I'll include a link to that in the description below, and hopefully you'll be back here sometime in the near future for this part. And without further ado, let's jump right back into the story. We start by getting a wide shot of Yavin, and then we're with Kanan as he calmly walks through the jungle and towards the sound of a lightsaber humming as it's being swung about. A few moments later we enter a clearing and, much to our surprise, we see Leia there, Anakin's lightsaber in hand, moving at a blistering pace as she fends off the random laser bolts of more practiced drones than we can even hope to count. "Princess!" Kanan calls out, but she either doesn't hear him or just ignores him and keeps practicing. He calls out Princess to her a couple more times, getting louder with each attempt, and finally Leia deactivates the saber. "Would you please stop calling me that?" she says, followed by a frustrated sigh. Kanan shrugs. "Sorry, Princess. Leia. I mean whatever you'd like me to call you." Leia walks up to him, her moment of frustration now over. She smiles at him and even lays a hand upon his chest to assure him. "Calling me Leia is fine, Kanan." Kanan gives an almost awkward nod and scratches at his head. "Got it, Leia, but I remember you being told to take it easy and let your wound fully heal, and I don't need to be able to see to recognize the sound of someone going full speed with their saber training." Leia's look becomes no nonsense. "I have to be ready, Kanan. I know that now. I was foolish to think that Luke would just turn back to the light side." Kanan looks hesitant to ask, but does anyway. "So that means you're giving up on Luke?" Leia vehemently shakes her head. "Never. But I have to face the truth. He may be lost forever, and I have to be ready for that." Kanan nods and then says, "Speaking of those lost forever," Leia cuts him off. "I know. I was just about to go and see him." Kanan lays a hand on Leia's shoulder. "I'll go down there with you if you'd like." Leia smiles warmly at him but shakes her head. "No, this is something I have to do alone." Kanan nods but then says very seriously, "I'll be sensing what's going on down there the whole time. If I feel even the slightest disturbance—" "No, Kanan," Leia interrupts again. "I'll be okay. And unlike the last time I said that to you, I really mean it this time." Leia looks down and then adds softly, "I never really said thank you for coming back for me on Tatooine. You saved my life." Kanan waves that away. "No need to thank me, Princess. Leia. You had to know I wasn't just going to leave you there. Just like I will be sensing everything going on down there between you and him, despite you telling me not to." Leia looks up and smiles at him again and says, "I know." We then jump to a shot of the planet Moraband, which is the long since abandoned and ruined homeworld of the Sith, and see that the Mandalorian ship that once belonged to Maul is parked outside of a crumbling temple. We're then in that temple, in a vast dark chamber, where Luke is using his red lightsaber as a light source as he searches among the ruins. At one point, he picks up what appears to be an old stone tablet, but when he brings the saber close to it to try and read it, we see it's almost completely faded, and out of frustration he flings it against the wall and curses, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. We then hear a muffled voice come from behind Luke and echo throughout the temple. "You'll find no answers here, young one." Luke whips around and sees a dark-robed figure with a hood up and hanging low over a masked face. "Who are you?" Luke asks, bringing his saber up into a defensive posture. "Someone who can help you," the hooded figure responds. Luke gives a dark smile. "Thanks, but I don't need anyone's help." The robed figure cocks their head to the side, ever so slightly. "Oh? You seek answers when you don't even know the questions, young one." Luke smirks again. "I already know plenty and don't need any help from you or anyone else." The hooded figure sighs ever so softly and explains, "Arrogance is the fatal flaw of all who wield the dark side. Admit it, young one. You have no idea what you're doing here or looking for. You don't even know what it is you hope to eventually accomplish." Luke's dark smile returns. "Yes, I do. I will destroy the Emperor and make this galaxy my own." The hooded figure chuckles. "And why do you want to rule this galaxy, young one?" Luke opens his mouth to answer, but says nothing. The hooded figure continues, "And do you really think if you kill the Emperor, everyone will suddenly bow before you? The Emperor's death would only bring about chaos and a power struggle. And if you're unlucky enough, history will remember that you were the one who brought about an age even darker than the reign of the Empire." Looking more frustrated than ever, Luke blurts out, "What is it you want from me?" The hooded figure slowly starts to approach Luke and says, "To give you a true purpose, young one." Luke's look instantly goes dark and his eyes begin to go yellow. "So, someone else who wants to use me. Never again. Never again will I yield to another." The hooded figure simply shakes their head. "Arrogance will be your undoing, young one. All the power in the galaxy will do you no good if you don't know how to fully tame and harness it." Luke smirks. "You'll find I'm full of surprises," he says as he charges the figure, who responds by quickly raising their hand and force pushing Luke halfway across the temple chamber. "You'll find I'm full of surprises as well," the figure says to themselves. Luke quickly recovers, and looking more angry than ever, charges the hooded figure, who responds by pulling out 2 sabers from their robes and saying, "Consider this your first lesson, young one." Luke snarls and says, "I don't need any lessons," and as soon as he reaches them, he starts taking wild, anger-fueled swings that are easily ducked and sidestepped by the figure, who moves with a very easy grace. With each miss, Luke seems to get angrier and swings even more erratically. But finally, one of his swings grazes the arm of the hooded figure, mostly just burning the robe and doing very little harm. Luke then stops his crazed assault and takes a few steps back, half looking pleased to have finally landed a blow, and half looking fearful as to what the response of the figure will be now that he's hit them. And for a long moment, the figure does and says nothing, but then finally simply says, "My turn," and ignites their first saber, and we see it as a pure white saber, and then they ignite their second saber, and it is black, with a blade reminiscent of the dark saber. Luke takes a couple more steps back and raises his saber in defense, and then with blinding speed the figure attacks, darting about so quickly that more often than not, Luke is facing the wrong direction and doesn't even see the attacks coming. But each attack is stopped before it would otherwise hack off a limb or slice through his body, not because they are being blocked by Luke, but because the figure stops himself mere inches from connecting. It doesn't take long before Luke just deactivates his saber, drops it and raises his hand and cries out, Okay, I get it. I clearly have much to learn yet." The figure stops their assault and deactivates their sabers and returns them to their robes, and again takes a calm, unassuming stance. Luke, not lowering his hands, then asks, "Who, or maybe should I say, what are you?" The figure then pulls back their hood and removes an ornate mask that they're wearing, revealing the face of Ahsoka Tano. But something is off about her. When she speaks, there is an echo of another voice mixed within hers, very similar to the female voice we heard speak within the Sith Temple on Malachor. "I am the one who will give you purpose and show you the way," Ahsoka says. Luke shakes his head. I don't understand." "And that is the problem," Ahsoka replies. "But soon you will, young one. Soon you will." We're then back on Yavin, and follow Leia, who is wearing Jedi robes, as she walks through a dark stone corridor, which appears to be in a lower level of one of the temples. Soon enough, the corridor opens into a room that reminds us of the room we saw in Vader's castle during Rogue One. There is a Bacta tank in the center of it, and posted in the corners behind it are 2 guards. Only this time, they're not the Emperor's Royal Guard, but rather rebel officers. Leia looks at both of the officers in turn and says, "You can leave us now." Both the officers shake their heads, and one explains that even though she has permission to speak with the prisoner, they are not to leave their posts under any circumstance. Leia then raises her hand, and along with a wave of it says, "You may leave your posts." The 2 officers look at each other and both say in unison, "We may leave our posts," before walking out of the room. Once gone, Leia goes up to the tank and after taking a deep breath, hits a button and the fluid begins to drain from it, revealing the scarred and hacked up form of Anakin Skywalker. Once drained, Leia hits another button and the tube lifts away, leaving just Anakin, who opens his eyes. There is a breathing apparatus over his mouth and nose, but when he speaks, it is not as deep and booming as it is when he is in his full suit. "How long has it been?" Anakin asks. "Several days," Leia says. "And no, your master has not come looking for you, though we're ready to evacuate at a moment's notice if he does. So far, though, it looks like I was right when I told the council this temple would be able to hide you from him." There is a long, awkward moment of silence before Leia asks, "Are you comfortable like that?" "I am never comfortable," Anakin admits. "About that," Leia begins. "Some of our best technicians took a look at your suit, and it's beyond obsolete. In fact, it was beyond obsolete when you were first put into it." Without any emotion, Vader simply says, "It was the will of my master that I wear it, and forever be reminded of my failure." Leia shakes her head, not understanding. "Most of your injuries could have been fixed with cybernetics. There really was no need for a full suit. Even the damage into your lungs could have been repaired." Anakin gives a sort of a snort and says, "Is that an offer?" Leia shakes her head and even chuckles. "Not exactly. The only thing anyone around here wants to talk about concerning you is how soon should you be executed. They think you're dangerous, even in this state." Anakin gives a slight nod as if he understands their concerns. "And what do you believe?" he asks. "There are no absolutes," Leia says with a shrug. "I can feel the dark side still surrounds you, but it no longer consumes you. But my word alone will not be enough to keep you alive, nor does it even begin to forgive all your crimes." Anakin again nods as if he completely understands. Leia then continues, "But there are ways that the council could be convinced to keep you alive, and in time, maybe you could even earn your freedom." To that, Vader says only one word: information. Leia nods. Exactly. The more you tell us, the more they might begin to trust you. Anakin seems to think for a long moment and then says, "The dark side, my master. As I told you, ridding myself of them is not a simple choice." Leia suddenly looks eager. "I know, and I can help you with that. Master Yoda was teaching me about how one can purge the dark side. I thought I was learning that to help my brother, but maybe he was teaching me so I could help you. It's funny, but he doesn't so much teach as he just guides you to learn on your own." Anakin nods, and it appears as if he even smiles, though the apparatus over his mouth makes it difficult to tell for certain. He then looks down and hesitantly asks, "Will you help me then, my daughter?" Leia smiles from ear to ear. "Yes, father, of course I will." Anakin nods and looks genuinely pleased, but his look quickly changes to concern. "Then there is something I need to tell you about. A weapon that my master will soon bring to bear on the galaxy." Leia's smile fades. "What weapon?" she asks. Anakin looks her dead in the eye and says, "They call it the Death Star." The scene then shifts, and we're back in the jungles of Yavin, and again following Kanan as the blind Jedi negotiates the low-hanging trees and brush, until he comes to a small clearing, and we find Ezra there, kneeling and meditating. When Ezra's eyes open, Kanan asks him how he's feeling, and Ezra responds by telling him it's taking some time to get used to the new leg. Kanan's hand goes to his face by his eyes and says, "Yeah, I know what you mean." Ezra's look then turns to shame. "I'm sorry, Master, for trying to kill you, and for using those Tuskens like I did. I guess I just did what I had to do to survive, and I eventually let my anger get the best of me." Kanan shakes his head and goes to kneel beside Ezra. "The fault is with me, Ezra. I've never been the best teacher, I know that." Ezra shakes his head. "Or maybe I've never been the best student." Both Kanan and Ezra chuckle for a moment, but it quickly dies out, and Ezra says, his tone getting serious as he looks off into the distance, "Something out there is still wrong." Kanan gives a wry smile and says, "Kid, considering what we've got locked up in the basement, there's a lot wrong." Ezra quickly says, No, something out there. I thought with Maul now dead, my connection to the Sith holocron would end, but it hasn't." Kanan looks concerned and confused. "What do you mean?" Ezra's eyes narrow as he tries to articulate just how he feels. "There was something else in the temple and connected to the holocron, and I think it's free now and found a new host." Kanan frowns. "A new host? Well, that sounds just great. Like we didn't have enough problems." Ezra then shuts his eyes and concentrates. "And I think Ahsoka lives." And that is where this part ends. Well, that's all I got for you this time. I hope you enjoyed the continuation of the story, even though I didn't originally intend to continue it. Anyway, let me know what you think about this part and where you think the story is going in the comments below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And if you like this video, please check out some of my other ones or go ahead and subscribe. If you've already done all that, then thanks for your continued support. If you want to know when I upload new videos, including the next part of this, click the notification button or just follow me on Twitter. And as always, thanks for watching.